Hello everybody, welcome to Ms. McGuire online video lecture, and today we're covering matters of sex, or how sex, being male or female, affect the patterns of inheritance. So let's go ahead and begin. After learning this chapter, you will be able to distinguish between the X and Y chromosomes, distinguish between Y linkage and X linkage, compare and contrast X-linked recessive inheritance and X-linked dominant inheritance, discuss the inheritance pattern of a trait that appears in only one sex, explain why X inactivation is necessary, explain how X inactivation is an epigenetic change, and discuss how X inactivation affects the phenotype in female mammals. So let's go ahead and begin. Humans males are heterogametic sex with different sex chromosomes. So if you are male, that you have 46 chromosomes, the same as female. You have 22 pairs of 44 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. And those sex chromosomes that you have, they are different. One is X and one is Y. That's why we call it heterogametic sex. Human females are homogametic sex. Females have 2 X chromosomes. X and Y chromosomes are different. Y chromosome is way smaller and has less genes, and X chromosome is a bigger chromosome, has more genes. So you see over here that all females have 2 X chromosomes, and if you have a male, then male will have X and Y chromosome. Even this look like a little X, right? But that's just, that's a duplicated chromosome. All chromosomes, when they're duplicated, look like X, but that's a bigger X chromosome and smaller Y chromosomes. Of course, there is some conditions when we have trisomy. So for example, we can have male with XX and Y chromosome. It's still considered to be male, but it's not normal, it's abnormal genotype. And we can have female with X0 with 1 X chromosome, so it's also abnormal genotype. So here we're talking about just typical female and male genotype, 2 X's, XX or XY. Now, X chromosome contains more than 1,500 genes. It's much larger than Y chromosome and acts as a homologue to Y in males. Y chromosome contains only 231 genes, so you can see the difference, right, between the number of genes on the X and Y chromosome. Y chromosome does not cross over along all of its lengths, and many DNA segments are palindromes. Palindromes means it's like you can read it from left to right and from right to left, so they're going to be the same letters, and this may destabilize DNA replication. And if you cannot replicate DNA, then we cannot, so very often we cannot make a messenger RNA, even replication, it's making the copy of DNA, but it also prevents DNA from being transcribed into messenger RNA, and as a result, we cannot make proteins, right? So that's how X and Y chromosomes are different. Now, we do have genes, right? 231 genes on a Y chromosome. Even some of these genes cannot be translated into proteins, but we still have genes. Those genes on the Y chromosomes are said to be Y-linked. Y-linked traits are very rare, and they transmitted from male to male. Now, why? Because if you are male you get X chromosome from your mom and you get Y chromosome from your dad. So those genes, and as a result, maybe some genetic disorders that are Y-linked, you can only get from your dad because you can get Y chromosome only from your father. Female do not have Y chromosome, right? So if you are male, you get your Y chromosome from your father. Currently, identify Y-linked traits involved in fertility and are not transmitted. So we don't have that many Y-linked traits, and as a result, we don't have that many Y-linked genetic disorders, right? So what about X chromosomes? Well, if we have genes located on the X chromosome, those are X-linked traits. Patterns of inheritance on the X chromosome differ in females and males. Females, X-linked traits are passed like autosomal traits. So in the females, because you have two X chromosomes, the inheritance is similar to autosomal traits. In the males, we have only one X chromosome, so we have an X-linked alleles that causes expression of the traits or illness. So you don't have the second allele on another X chromosome to counteract the effect of the gene on one X chromosome. So human male is considered homozygous for X-linked traits. So we have for example, if you have big A, this is homozygous. If you have big A, little a, it's a heterozygous. But males, they have, for example, they XY, right? And X might carry like dominant allele A. So what is this? It's not homo, it's not hetero, so it's called hemizygous for X-linked traits. Right, so here we have a male with X and Y chromosome. His sperms will carry one X chromosome or one Y chromosomes, because remember, we segregate homologous chromosomes. In a female, we have two X chromosomes, so all female eggs have X chromosomes, right? So if you're a female, every egg that is mature in your ovaries will carry X chromosome. So that's a father who determines sex of a baby, because mother can give her children only X chromosome. Mother cannot give children Y chromosome. So mother always gives X, right? And it's up to father. If father gives a baby X chromosome, that's gonna be a girl. If father gives a baby Y chromosome, that's gonna be a boy, right? Now, those traits that link to X chromosomes. So X chromosomes, remember, we just said X chromosome has genes. And those genes, they determine a specific trait. Those traits are X-linked. So we have X-linked recessive trait or X-linked dominant trait. So they are not, of course, there is some differences between dominant and recessive trait. Now, if it's X-linked recessive, it's always expressed in the male, because male have only one X chromosome. So it doesn't matter if this X chromosome carries recessive or dominant allele, it always will be expressed in male. If it's X-linked dominant trait, it's expressed in females in one copy. So even if it's in, so that's what it says. So let's say we have allele and it's recessive, A, right? So if we have a male, even the recessive allele will be expressed if it's linked to X, right? So because there is no another dominant allele that would mask this recessive. If we have a female, right, and we have one recessive, one dominant, then this recessive will not be expressed because we have dominant that mask this recessive. But a dominant trait, this big A, it's always will be expressed in female, even if it has one copy. Now it's X-linked recessive trait. It's expressed in females homozygote and very rarely in female heterozygotes. It's affected male inherits trait from heterozygous or homozygous mother. Affected female inherits trait from affected father and affected or heterozygous mother. If it's X-linked dominant trait, it's expressed in females in one copy. It's much more severe effects in males, high rates of miscarriage due to early lethality in males, and pass from male to all the daughters but to no sons. Now, why male passes to all his daughters? Because what your father gives you, his X chromosome. So if a father has XY, right, and it has some dominant trait, dominant A, so your father always give it to his daughters. So all his daughters will get father X chromosome because sons will get Y chromosome. Right, so, okay. And X-linked recessive traits are expressed in females if the causative allele is present in two copies. So what it means, if we have X-linked recessive, so here's our X, and we have this recessive allele. So in female to be expressed, it must be present on both X chromosomes. So it's need to be, like, you know, if we're looking at just some somatic traits to be expressed, and for recessive to be expressed, we need two copies of recessive gene to be expressed. The same with X-linked. So if condition is not lethal, a man may be healthy enough to transmit it to the offspring. Now, a male, so for female, only if we have two copies that recessive trait will be expressed. In a male, we need only one copy to be expressed. So if this is not lethal, then the father can pass it to the offspring. And we have some condition, ictiosis, color blindness, hemophilia. Those are all X-linked recessive traits. Now, the first disorder, ictiosis, when we have enzyme deficiencies that block removal of cholesterol from skin cells, it's shown on this diagram. So this is how skin of a person who affected look like. And you can see that father is affected over here and mother is not. And their child was a carrier. And then the son is affected too. So this is grandfather and grandson. So if those are parents, those are grandparents, and this is their son. So grandfather and grandson are affected, and mother is a carrier because that's a recessive trait. So let's see. If this is recessive trait, right, let's represent it with little I, right? So that's our ictiosis. So that's what causes skin look like that. Now the father was affected, so and it's located on the X chromosome. So here's the genotype of a father. X with little I, Y. The mother over here is not a carrier. So the mother here was, so we cross with mother was not affected. So it has a dominant I and dominant I. Right. So it doesn't have this disease. Now this daughter, it's received because the daughter must receive X from father. So the daughter receives this X from a father. So the daughter was X from mother, X with big I, right? So from mother, and for father, this allele for ichthyosis. So daughter is a carrier, right? So she married this guy and he's not a carrier. So this guy is X with capital I and Y. Now that's a son. So father can only give him Y chromosome, only Y chromosome. Mother can give either normal X chromosome or X chromosome with mutation. In this example, mother give him chromosome with a mutation with little case I because he is affected as well. So this is how linked X-linked recessive traits are passed. So they mothers are carrier and males are more affected than females. So this is another disorder. It's X-linked recessive hemophilia B. And we're not gonna look into all these patterns, but you can see that this is a boy. This is the boy. A boy, a boy, a boy. So if you look at the affected kids, they are boys that are affected, and girls are carriers. Right, so that's how we know it's X-linked. When it's X-linked, we have more males affected than females, and females are carrier. But why females do not have hemophilia? Because for female to have hemophilia, it must have two broken alleles. So female must be must have two broken alleles for the same gene. For a male, just one is enough to be hemophilia. Now, X-linked dominant traits are rare. Gene expression differs between the sexes. Female who inherits a dominant X-linked allele or in whom the mutation originates has the associated trait. Of course, if it's a dominant, you just have one mutated allele and you show the trait. But a male who inherits the allele is usually more severely affected because he has no other allele to mask its effect. Most cases are the result of new mutation rather than transmission from a parent. An example is Rett syndrome. This is the condition that affects brain development, or incontinentia pigmenti. And incontinentia pigmenti is shown over here, by the way. So this is how it looked like when we have some patches of pigmented skin. And this is our Punnett square. Show that. So here's the father, and it's unaffected. So it has a because it's a dominant trait and father has recessive allele. So father's sperm is normal. And this is affected a female. It only has one dominant allele, but because, one broken allele or mutated alleles that cause disorder and disease, but because it's dominant, it's enough. So this is heterozygous affected female. And this is her oocyte. So this oocyte does not carry this mutation, and this oocyte does. So now when we build our Punnett square, this will be our affected daughter. This is going to be affected son, and this is going to be unaffected daughter and unaffected son. Right, so we can see that in the dominant traits, for daughter to be affected, just one dominant allele is enough. So to have this disorder. X inactivation. Now we know that females have two X chromosomes and males have X and Y. Well, how is really possible, for males to survive with only one X chromosome when female have two? It means there is important genes over here, right? And in a male, some of these alleles for a gene are missing. But that's actually possible because even in females, we have two X chromosomes, but one X chromosome is inactivated. That's pretty interesting, right? So even in the females, one X chromosome is not active. So overall, male and female, they both have only one functioning X chromosome. So females have two alleles for X chromosomes genes, but males have only one. In mammals, X inactivation balances this inequality in the expression of genes on the X chromosome. A female mammal is mosaic for expression of most genes on the X chromosome. So we have XIST gene that encodes for RNA that binds to and inactivates X chromosome. So we have this gene, right, that make a special protein, and protein binds to this X chromosome and inactivates it. X inactivation occurs early in prenatal development. The adult female has patches of tissue that differ in the expression of X-linked genes. It alters the phenotypes and not the genotype. It is an example of epigenetic change, an inherited change that does not alter DNA-based sequence. So when we inactivate X chromosome, we do not change sequences of nucleotide. We just pretty much shut off one X chromosome. That's why it's epigenetic change. Inactivated DNA has chemical methyl groups bound to it that prevent it from being transcribed into RNA. Okay. So this is how it looks in the example. So here the fertilized ovum. So that's the ovum, that's an egg, right, that already was fertilized by sperm, and it has maternal X chromosome and paternal X chromosome. So that's a girl. Then cells start dividing. So remember, after fertilization, cells divide by mitosis, so we create identical cells. Now, early in a division, one X chromosome is inactivated. And it can be either maternal or paternal, and it became body. So over here, look, we have like inactivation of paternal X chromosome, here inactivation of maternal, maternal, but this is cells of a living organism already. Those are not eggs or sperms or oocyte and sperm. So they will be tissues. So when they divide through the mitosis, they kind of carry their inactivated chromosomes. So these parts of the body will have only X chromosome from mom, and those parts of the body will only have chromosome from dad. So, so this one example of this mosaic pattern that results from X inactivation. We have skin without normal sweat glands, right? So that skin, if we inactivate maternal X chromosome, and then a skin with a normal skin, with normal sweat glands, right? So that's interesting. X inactivation can be used to check the sex of an individual. Nucleus of a cell of a female during interphase contains bar body. So if you take during very early development, let's say we fertilize egg with a sperm in a laboratory setting, and even before those organs are developed, we can just, if we see this bar body, that means that's one X chromosome inactivated. So that's a growth. The consequences of X activation on a phenotype can be interesting. If we homozygous X-linked genotype, then it doesn't have any effect. When we have heterozygous, that leads to expression of one allele or the other. And what it means that if you have, for example, if we have female and both X chromosome carries, the same dominant allele or the same recessive allele, right? So that's our homozygous genotype. So this is homozygous and this is homozygous. Then it doesn't matter which X chromosome we deactivate. We can deactivate this one, and all cells will still have this dominant allele, or we can inactivate this one, and all the cell will have recessive allele. However, if we have heterozygous, so that's one female, right? This is female one, this is female two. But if we have female that is heterozygous, right? So that's a female three. Now it matters what X chromosome is inactivated. Because if we inactivate this chromosome, right, then all the cells that originate from the cell with inactivation of dominant allele will have only recessive allele, right? If we inactivate this X chromosome, that all cells will carry dominant cells that formed from our parent cell, they will all have dominant allele. So that's interesting how the X inactivation affects phenotype. Depends if the phenotype was, if genotype was homozygous or heterozygous. So here's the effect of X chromosome inactivation. In female that expresses a phenotype corresponding to an X-linked gene, it is a manifesting heterozygote. This X inactivation is obvious in calico cats. So this calico cats, why calico cats are so interesting? Because they have black and orange pigment, and of course white, right? Now a black, this color, it's X-linked. So on the X chromosome, we have black, right? And on the X chromosome, we have orange. So on the X chromosome, we have orange. So if this is the male cat, so male cat can be, because it's XY, male cat can be black or male cat can be orange. And of course, both can have some white color. So if it's a male cat, it's only two possibilities, either this genotype or this genotype. Now, this male cat gonna be black, this male cat will be orange. Now, in the female cats, we have, it can be female cat like this, right? That's gonna be black. A female cat like this, that's going to be orange, but it also can be female cats that look like this. And this cat will have both black and orange patches. And the white is a different type of inheritance, right? So both males and females can be white and black or white and orange, but only females can be three colors: white, black, and orange. And then we have patches. So why we have, for example, here we have black and here we have orange? Because cells that produce this patch, they have this X chromosome inactivated. And cells that produce black color, all right, they have this chromosome, X chromosomes that carry orange color inactivated. So it's interesting that calico cats are only female cat. Very, very rare we can have male calico cats, but then they need to be have trisomy, so they need to have XXY chromosome. That is not normal genotype. In humans, X inactivation can be used to identify carriers of some X-linked disorders like Hunter syndrome. Lex and Nihan syndrome affect the severity of Rett syndrome. So we use this X inactivation to identify if female is a carrier for some disorders. An equal X inactivation pattern can occur if the two X chromosomes have different alleles for a gene that controls cell division. Then it will give advantage for some cell for survival, and cell that have this gene that survive better. So we will see more cells that originate from the cell that has this gene. And so what it means, so remember how we have like one cell, and this has XX chromosome, and another cell that has X and X chromosome, and one of these X chromosome will be inactivated, right? So, however, what if so let's say this carries a big A and little a, and this carries big A and little a. So in some cells, you will have this chromosome inactivated, and in other cells, you will have this chromosome inactivated. But then we have the whole we have lots of daughter cells that originate from cell 1, and lots of daughter cells originate from cell number 2, right? However, if this cell, for example, has advantage in the survival, then we will have more cells that originate from cell 2 than we have cells that originate from cell 1, right? I hope it makes sense. Right, so that's X chromosome inactivation. Okay, and that was our last slide for this chapter. I want to remind you that we discussed how sex affect the patterns of inheritance. Thank you for watching, and I hope it was helpful.